What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben, and welcome back to another episode of Ben Builds. We are back on the 1/40th scale FJ-2 Fury by Kity Hawk, and today I'm hoping to go ahead and button up that front nose area and get that one step closer to being finished. Now, last time we worked on the cockpit. Everything looks good in there. I did not glue on the front instrument panel. I just didn't want to fool with that just yet, but I think today we can go ahead and tack it in. We also have the chair more or less built up, but there's a lot of detail work to be done on that, like pads and harnesses and all that, so we'll get that eventually. We can do that at any time, really, to be honest. Now, the front nose here, we have the insides painted with that nice green color that we mixed up. We've got a gloss coat over everything, and I think we are ready to go ahead and start some weathering today. That's really going to be fun. Now, looking at the instructions, I'm left with a little bit of a conundrum, because they want you to actually install that nose gear up inside that intake and then put everything into the front of the fuselage. I'm not really interested in doing that because I know me and I will snag this on something and just snap that gear clean off. And the lengthening process last episode is held up beautifully. It's rock steady. Not really worried about that. I just know that I will catch it on something and just pop the whole thing clean out of the bay. So we're going to go ahead and just leave it off for now, and I'm hoping to install it after the fact. Now let's go ahead and test fit actually flip it over. There we go. Helps if you have the parts in the right direction. And this actually fits in there very nicely. The intake and landing gear bay are all one unit, so that helps. But again, they want you to install that front nose wheel, and I'm just not comfortable with doing that. So we're going to leave it off, and I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that we can go ahead and put that in after that nose is all kind of closed up and the fuselage is together. Now, for the cockpit itself, we don't have any real issue yet with this cockpit. It seems to be fairly snug in there, so I'm glad I pulled those gun bays out. That gives us some extra room to add weight. Because this is a tricycle landing gear aircraft, I don't want it sitting on its tail, so I'm going to put enough weight in the front nose, hopefully to kick that forward and keep the center of gravity more towards the front nose. That's going to be, hopefully, very simple to do. Now, speaking of weights, I actually have something I want to go ahead and try. Now, these are old weights I pulled out of a model that I built years ago. It just fell off my shelf and broke, and it was old anyway, so I pulled these out and salvaged some of the parts. I should be able to go ahead and use these and kind of fit them right up inside the gun bays, or where the gun bays used to be. Now, I'm not sure how it's all going to kind of fit together, but if we do a quick dry fit here, we put in the intake, and we put the cockpit tub on top of that, and put that into the fuselage, you can see there's a big gap, and that is just enough room to go ahead and slide in these nose weights. Now, these are, I believe, 7 grams, so they're not exactly super heavy, so I think 3 or maybe 2 should be enough to kick that weight a little bit more forward. At least, well, that's my intention. Now, these were originally self-adhesive. That is long been worn off, so I'm just going to super glue them down to the inside of those gun bays, and yeah, I'm hoping that this will work perfectly. I might need to do a little bit of trimming here and there, but for the most part, I think it's going to add enough weight, kick that thing forward, and keep it on its gears. Go ahead and move on though, and let's go ahead and do some weathering on the cockpit. Right now, it's got a nice gloss coat on it, and I think it looks pretty shiny, so I'm eventually going to have to hit it with a flat coat, but as you can see, there's a lot of little details in there that just needs to be kind of popped. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and switch over to the Tamiya panel line accent. I used that last episode on my 109 and absolutely loved it, so we're going to go ahead and use it today. This should be fun, guys. So let's kick it in, see what we can do. So now we have our weights glued in. The cockpit is more or less weathered. I didn't do too much because, well, these things weren't used all that long and mostly used by Marine squadrons, and then they switched over to the FJ-3s, so I don't think these would have been too heavily weathered, at least not in this operational use. So I've kept it more or less clean, but a little bit of scuffing, a little bit of basic panel line accenting. I think it's fine. So now, of course, fitting it into the fuselage, I've done a quick dry fit, and it looks like I need to do a little bit of trimming here and there to get this thing to all fit together. I did accidentally kind of glue those nose weights a little bit too far forward. I should have kept them a little bit back past the front firewall. I didn't, but that's okay. We can do a little bit of kit surgery here and cut out one of these little locating tabs, and that should allow this to sit in there and still have enough contact to glue everything in. Plus, this will be sitting on top of the intake trunking, so I'm not too concerned about all of that. It should be perfect. Yeah, that looks actually really, really nice. So we're going to have to go ahead and do a little bit of trimming on those weights, but I think we are ready to go ahead and glue up the front cockpit area. So everything is nicely sandwiched in there. I've dropped some glue on the front nose, and I'm going to go ahead and put some rubber bands around that to keep everything together. And I got to tell you, it works, guys. It actually works. So I'm pretty happy about that. I was worried about everything kind of fitting together, but everything does go together nicely. I do need to go ahead and make a few alterations here and there. I need to do some sanding because he's got that front nose cap that needs to fit on there. It's not really fitting all that perfectly. There's a little bit of some issue, I think, but I'm going to look at it and figure it out and do some sanding, do some shaving down of some plastic, and then we'll glue it in, and I think we'll be okay. Everything did fit. I did have to do a little bit of shaving down of some of the weights on the sides because they were a little bit too proud, and so I just kind of contoured and I shaved them down a little bit, so I lost a little bit of weight up there, but I don't think it's enough to really make any sort of big difference. Plus, I can always add a little extra because I'm not putting anything in there yet, like landing gears or any sort of wing attachment. So we should have an opening where we can shove a bit more weight if it ends up being not enough. Now I did end up putting on the rear bulkhead as well. That should keep everything nicely lined up. Otherwise, the fuselage tends to kind of bow in and then it pops that seam up the top there. So I'm going to glue this in just for some added stability. And then I think we should be pretty decent to go ahead and move on. But I think first we have to tackle this front nose because I want to get this as complete as possible. So a little bit of glue here and we'll keep it sandwiched together, put some pressure on and move up to that front nose cone, because I think I've got a good plan and how to get this thing all lined up. So this is how we stand right now. We have our front cockpit area all nicely lined up and everything looks good. I love the way the cockpit's turned out so far. But now we're turning over to that front nose cap. It's a little bit of, I guess, a lip that goes all the way around that front area, and then this kind of fits down over top of that. I'm finding that it actually interferes with the joint up here. There's a little bit of some steps I need to go ahead and sand down. So what I'm actually planning on doing, I've already started doing some of this. I'm actually taking off some of that lip. That's allowing this to fit a bit better, more flush to that front nose area. A little bit of glue, put some pressure on that, and I think it'll stay perfectly. Ultimately, I think it's coming along. So I'm going to take my hobby knife. We're going to slice out a couple of these pieces of plastic. I can actually take off a little bit here on the front gun inserts because, like I said, they are inserts, and we can take the plastic off underneath that. And that should be fine too, because the sides have a little bit of some issue fitting as well. I'm finding it really exciting to see it all kind of fit together. And despite the modifications I've made, everything is working. So I'm very happy. Yep, that looks good. So let's go ahead and put some glue on that, put some rubber bands around there to keep some pressure. And yeah, I think we're looking fine. Now I'm going to let that dry though. We're going to move back over to a time lapse and I'm going to start tackling the wings. On almost any aircraft I've ever built that has folding wing options, they never really fit well. Either they fit perfectly when they're in the folded position and they do not fit when they're unfolded, or vice versa. So I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I'm excited. Let's go ahead and jump into that time lapse, get those wings built up, and then we can go ahead and test fit, see how everything goes together. Let's do it. All right, everybody, we are back, and we have a completed front nose here on our FJ-2 Fury. The cockpit looks beautiful. I love how the weathering is just slightly subtle. It's not crazy. These things weren't used very much operationally, so they wouldn't be, destroyed and heavily weathered. Our front coping right there, glued in place. We've got those little vents popped up there. I'm very happy with it. Now the nose, as you can see, fits together decently. We have everything glued together, and there's a little bit of a step right here, but that's not bad. Nothing we can't take off with a little bit of sanding. Same thing with the back here, a little bit of a step, but ultimately it's looking fine. I'm actually really surprised. I've heard horror stories about Kity Hawk, so this is going together much better than I anticipated. Now the wing and fuselage joint here, as you can see, it sits not quite right there on the back, so I think the culprit is the front of the fuselage. These areas right here. I think if we take those down, we'll be able to fit that much more efficiently, and it should hopefully eliminate that gap in the back. So other than that, guys, I think we are ready to go ahead and call it quits for today's episode. We've got our fuselage and our wings, and next time we'll come back. We'll continue pushing forward on the rear part of the aircraft, get the engine built up, and just see where we go from there. So until our next episode, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, and we'll see you back here on the next episode of Ben Builds. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you soon.